Hello, viewers. Welcome today to our Stony Brook Experts edition for the summer. I am so excited. The weather is turning nice. It's starting to get warm out. And we have some wonderful experts here today to talk to you about summer safety. Before we do that, I want to share with you that Stony Brook University Hospital is the only ASC verified level 1 both adult and pediatric trauma center in Suffolk County. We have this highest designation from the New York Department of Health and Wellness. And literally every summer, every year, we admit about 300 patients that are children with traumatic injuries due to summer safety issues. And so today we're going to give you some tips and hints on how to avoid some of those particular traumatic injuries. So I'm going to go ahead and start by introducing our panel. Again, I'm Liz Popwell. I'm the Chief Strategy and Transformation Officer for Stony Brook Medicine. Kristi, let's go ahead and go to you and learn a little bit about your expertise.
Sure. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here today. My name is Christy Ladowski. I am a public health professional, and my job here at Stony Brook is I'm actually the injury prevention and outreach coordinator for the Stony Brook Trauma Center for both pediatric and adults. So really, I like to say my job is trying to prevent the injuries in the first place, so that way our kids don't have to end up in our emergency department or in our hospital. But like you said, unfortunately they do. So I'm so glad to be here with our colleagues from our emergency department to also share some things.
Thanks, Kristi. I appreciate it. Jackie, would you like to go next?
Sure. My name is Jackie Bober. I'm one of the Pediatric Emergency Department attendings. I've been now at Stony Brook for almost 7 years. I'm a fellow Long Islander as well. I've grown up on Long Island. The furthest I went was for training in Brooklyn, and then I ended up back here on Long Island at Stony Brook Hospital for the past almost 7 years in July. I'm very excited for this panel and for this discussion. It's my passion to prevent you guys from not coming to the emergency department with any of these injuries. So I'm very glad to be speaking on this.
That's great. Thanks, Jackie. Chelsea, would you like to go next?
Sure. My name is Chelsea Finn. I am one of the pediatric nurse practitioners that works in our pediatric emergency department. I work with Dr. Bober and Anne-Marie, who you'll meet soon. I am also excited to be part of this panel. As you said, it's getting warm and our numbers are picking up for these very reasons. So we would love to give you guys some information about some good injury prevention and safety tips for this summer.
Great. Thank you, Chelsea. Anne-Marie.
Hi, I'm Anne-Marie Aberman. I'm a nurse practitioner in the pediatric ER at Stony Brook. I've been at Stony Brook for 17 years, both as a nurse in the emergency department as well as a nurse practitioner. So I have a lot of experience and have seen a lot of things over my years. I also have 3 teenage daughters, so I have a lot of experience with injuries and prevention of injuries. So it's nice to be involved in this, and I'm very excited to share my knowledge.
Great. Thank you so much. So let's go ahead and get into the questions that we have. Let's talk first about common injuries. Jackie, can you share with us what some of the common injuries are that bring children and their families into the emergency room during the summer?
Oh, yeah, no problem. So, with the weather being nicer, people are outside more, kids and adults. The summer months, like you had said, are increasing traumatic injuries. That's basically what we see throughout the summer. We see a lot of fractures. We do see a lot of playground injuries, most commonly on our monkey bars and slides. We do see a lot of sporting injuries. I guess the popular sports now that are going on are lacrosse. A lot of broken bones from lacrosse, concussions from lacrosse. And we also see a lot of dehydration. Again, the weather is nicer. There are a lot of those 5Ks on the weekends or track meets. So we do see patients coming in with a lot of dehydration or some muscle damage because they've overworked their muscles from these tracks and runs. Again, weather nicer, we do see a lot of bicycle injuries, a lot unhelmeted, not wearing helmets, unfortunately. And I think, Suffolk County, people have a lot more property, and we do see a lot of people, and even children, I would say mostly teenagers, on ATVs. So we do see a lot of ATV injuries, unfortunately. Yeah. Again, with summer around, we do see a lot of parties, outdoor parties, a lot of barbecues, people open their pools. So unfortunately, we do have quite a few throughout the summer of drowning incidents. And then the month of July is our very popular fireworks month. 4th of July is pretty popular for firework injuries. So these are probably our most common injuries we see throughout the summer.
Yeah, that's great. I appreciate you sharing that. I know growing up, I had two brothers that did fireworks, and every summer I was wondering how on earth did they do that and not get hurt. That just scares me to death. So I'm glad you brought up fireworks. If you have questions for our experts, there's a QR code and a link down at the bottom of the screen. So please feel free to drop something in the chat, and we'll be happy to answer any specific questions you have. But before we get on to any questions from the audience, Jackie, can you talk a little bit more about pool safety and beach safety? I know living on Long Island, we have so many pools and so many beautiful beaches, but they can be dangerous. So can you share a little bit about that?
Yes. So drowning has become my kind of passion. Prevention of drowning, I should say, has become my passion. Especially now that I have little kids, and really teaching them to swim and making sure they know how to swim, and pool safety. It's a very big thing, and I didn't really think of this until I had kids. So I just want you guys all to know that drowning is the #1 cause of death in children ages 1 to 4. We have different commissions that have studied drownings among children of the ages under 4. And in Arizona, California, and Florida, where pools are especially common, it found that nearly 70% of the children were not expected to be in a pool at that time, yet they were found in the water of the kids who had drowned. And in fact, 46% of the children were last seen in the house. What is the most effective way to prevent a drowning with a pool is fences, pool fences. Most of them take place at your own home. Kids wander out of the house. I could see my own 2-year-old doing this. And really, the fence is the first and #1 prevention tool we can use to prevent a drowning. More than a quarter of drownings among children age 4 and under took place at the home of a friend or a relative or a neighbor. So what are ways we can prevent drowning with a fence? First off, the fence should be at least 4 feet high and 4 sides all around connecting, and completely surround that pool, separating it from the house and the rest of the yard. It's also good to have a fence around your house, but really when you have a pool, it should be around the pool itself. It should be climb proof. Meaning the fence itself shouldn't have any footholds, handholds, or objects such as lawn furniture or play equipment that the child could actually use to climb over the fence. Chain link fences are very easy to climb and are not recommended as pool fences, just so you guys know. And then the slat space, the spaces between the actual pieces of the fence shouldn't be more than 4 inches between them. If you think about it, kids can be tiny, they could slip their bodies through it and try to get into the pool. Now, regarding the latch itself for a pool. So when you open the door and you close the gate for the pool, it should be self-closing and self-latching. Because sometimes, you can close the pool fence, but you didn't lock it, right? It just closed and maybe it didn't snap all the way in. So it definitely should be self-latching. And that latch should be at least 54 inches from the ground. And when you do lock your pool, and you should really keep that pool toy-free and locked when you're not in use. If you have toys in it, the kids might want to go in it. They see it, it's, their toy, they want to go get it, and they're going to try to do whatever they can to get into that pool. Another thing I want to mention, is pool alarms. That's another thing you can add besides having the fence. It's additional layer of protection. You could use pool alarms itself. You can buy them usually at local pool stores or online. Also for your house, if your kids are indoors and they're supposed to be indoors, maybe you could set your alarm in your house on, or a gate alarm you could purchase as well, that it goes off if they open that gate when they're not supposed to. Things you should check: make sure your alarms are in good shape with fresh batteries, and really it's not a substitute for a properly installed pool fence. Really the fence is the #1, but this is another additive you can do. So I have a pool myself. We have pool covers on it. We have a pool cover on it right now. The pool cover should cover the entire pool securely so the child can't slip under them. You should make sure that the pool itself doesn't even have doesn't collect standing water on top of it, because kids themselves, they can drown in 2 inches of water. That's all it takes. If you can do and you can afford it, you could get a power operated cover. It's the safest and the easiest. But those floating and those winter covers, those are not safety covers. So don't consider that as a good cover for a pool. That actually increases drowning risk. I just want to talk about other things. So I say that when we're in the emergency department, and Chelsea and Anne-Marie can actually probably attest this, majority of our drownings that come in happen with usually a lot of people around at barbecues or your own house with a lot of children at home. And a child maybe slips away and it doesn't get noticed that they're drowning, essentially. So what we recommend, and what the American Academy of Pediatric recommends, is water watchers versus having a lifeguard at a pool. So if you have a barbecue, a family barbecue, there's gonna be a lot of people there. Everyone's having fun usually. There might be alcohol involved. We really recommend every 5 minutes, every 30 minutes, we need to have someone watch.
And I think
Dr.
Bober might have a connection issue, but I'm happy to also chime in a little bit about what she was just discussing, which is the designated water watcher. So like Dr. Bober was mentioning, a lot of times, unfortunately, these drownings occur when there's a lot of adults around, but nobody is actively supervising the water. So as she was mentioning, we have short attention spans. Mm-hmm. So to ask somebody to be a designated water watcher is a big deal. And we want to limit that time to about, maybe 15, 20 minutes. And to make sure that that person is watching the water undistracted, we give these away a lot. So I'm going to show them on the screen. These are what we call designated water watcher tags. So it has a whistle on it so that you can blow for help. But really what's happening here is once you're wearing this, it's making that jingling noise, which I'm sure you can hear, to really keep constant reminder to the person who's wearing it that I am the water watcher and I shouldn't be on my phone. I shouldn't be engaged in a conversation with any other adults. My one job is to watch the pool for that designated amount of time. Again, somewhere between 10 and 20 minutes. If I have to go to use the restroom or I'm done being the designated water watcher, I need to hand this off to the next person. But as some of my colleagues would probably want to mention too, being the designated water watcher is a big deal. What you could also do is, it's becoming very common, is hire a lifeguard if you're going to be having an event with a lot of adults and children around and you want everyone to enjoy themselves. You can also hire a lifeguard if that's available to you too. So I think Dr. Bober's back on. I'm not sure if we want to bounce it back to her or if any of my colleagues wanted to chime in too, but I did want to share about that water watcher tag.
I have given out those water watcher tags to several friends who are going to be hosting pool parties or suggested that they hire lifeguards, and they have all been very well received, especially hiring lifeguards. Anyone who I know has done it has been very happy that they did it, especially if they're having a party where there's lots of children, who are going to be in the pool, and no one is really designated to watch them at all times.
Right. Jackie, would you like to jump back in and talk a little bit more about swimming and swim lessons?
Yeah, definitely. Again, I have 3 little kids. I have put them in swim lessons. The American Academy of Pediatric recommends swim lessons as a layer of protection against drowning, and you could start them down to age 1. If you go onto the American Academy of Pediatric websites, they have different, style swim lessons and things you can look into to see what type of lessons you want to get for your child. Parents, caregivers, and pool owners, you should know CPR or how to get and how to get emergency help. I have extra life jackets even at my own house with pools and everything. And so any child that doesn't know how to swim, they should be wearing a life jacket and life preserver while in the pool. Okay. If a child is ever missing, I just wanted to say this, you should really look for it in your house. Look for him or her in the pool or spa first. Especially if your child's prone to wandering. Drowning, they don't always occur in pools. Bird baths, little fountains or ponds in your backyard, a kid can drown in it. They could be beautiful landscape features, but maybe consider installing them when they're older. And then also kiddie pools. So, the little kiddie pools, and maybe they're like a foot tall. You have to be watching your child at all times in that kiddie pool. And when you're done, the big thing is, and we've seen, unfortunately, a couple of these injuries, when empty the kiddie pool, totally dump it out so there's no water at all. Again, because children can drown in as little as 2 inches of water. When you're with your child near the pool or even at the beach in the water there, you should have touch supervision. So you should be within, able to touch them at all times, just easy reach with your arm. And then I did want to mention this, a lot of us, we saw, a little study about bathing suits. So if you think about it, for pools and different, areas of water, bathing suits themselves, the neon colors, neon pink and neon orange, you can really see those in the pool. So those are probably your best color bathing suits while you're swimming.
Great. That's a great tip. I really like that. Let's move on to some other topics. Christy, I know last weekend was a great weekend. I was able to get outside a little bit. I actually even spoke to my husband. I said, I need my tires on my bike refilled so I can get out there and get on my bike and go for a ride. Talk a little bit about bike safety, skateboard safety, and other things. I know just anecdotally, my daughter, she's 20 now, but when she was young, she had a scooter and actually broke her wrist over just the tiniest little rock she tripped on. So I know that's really important.
Absolutely. So when we think about it, a broken wrist, a broken bone, those will heal over time, right? But we only have one brain, and our brain helps us do everything. We really need to protect our brains. And there was this great awareness campaign from a group of students who made a commercial that really focused on, we would think we would never go up with our cell phone that we love and cherish and take around with us every day that we feel so connected to. We put a cover on that cell phone because we don't want it to crack and break. But we don't give our brains that same respect and care, right? So the one thing that's going to be protecting our brain when we're riding our bikes or scooters, skateboards, all of those wheeled activities is a helmet. And it's not just for kids, it is for adults too. And we really encourage adults to lead by example. So, if we all think back to when we were kids, we wanted to be adults. Now that we're adults, we wish we could be kids again. We can't go back in time, but if we can make sure that we're preventing injuries in kids so that they can grow up to achieve their full potential, that's what we're trying to do here. So making it a standard rule that every time you're on a wheeled activity, whether you're a child or an adult, again, setting by example that everyone's going to wear their helmet. And then we have to wear our helmet the right way. So I don't have a helmet with me today, but I'm still going to demonstrate this because a lot of times you'll see folks wearing a helmet. It'll be a little bit far behind on the back of their head or really loose straps or not even buckled at all and just kind of sitting on the tops of our heads. So there's a few things to go through with kids to make sure that their helmet is fitting the right way each time they're going to go ride their wheeled activities. So we always encourage you to hold up 2 fingers and put them right on top of your eyebrow. And make sure the front of your helmet comes down because this is a really important part of our brain that doesn't even fully develop until almost 25 years old. So we want to make sure we're protecting our whole brain. And then if you make a V with your fingers, that's where those straps are going to go on the side. So if you imagine a helmet and you have those 2 straps, you want to make sure that they come down with that connector piece right there, right below the ear. And then really buckling the helmet so that you can't really fit more than 2 fingers underneath the neck strap. And what we like to do, rather than, really trying to go too tight or too loose with the helmet, we just put it on and then ask the child to shake their head. If that helmet wiggles or moves out of place, it's too loose. We want it to stay exactly where we put it the first time. So again, wearing our helmet every time we ride our bikes, scooters, skateboards, everything is just so important. And we really encourage adults and parents and other grown-ups in children's lives to lead by example. It's important for all of us. Liz, like you said, all it takes is a little bit of sand on the road and oof, no matter how experienced of a biker we are, I know in our adult emergency department, we see it all the time. Very experienced bikers who go out often riding their bikes every weekend for physical activity, they can still fall off of their bike and they are saying, thank goodness I was wearing my helmet, because you often see them in groups. They are wearing their helmets. They know how important it is. And they're experienced bikers. So it really is important for everyone. And I know you asked about bikes and scooters and then wondered about a few other things. So I do just want to make a note because we see this a lot in Suffolk County. There's a lot of ATVs and off-road vehicles being ridden on roadways. And we're not sure if parents are aware that those are not those are not designated to be on the road. That's illegal, and teenagers should not be riding those on the roads. Those are meant to be off-road vehicles, so they're not going to be able to be ridden safely on roadways, which is a very different terrain than riding in a dirt or grass field. And the American Academy of Pediatrics actually does not recommend anyone under the age of 16 ride on one of those vehicles. But again, if anyone is going to, of any age is going to ride on them, please, please, please wear a helmet. We do know that we have helmet laws for anybody riding motorcycles. And again, children should not be riding on motorcycles. Those are for adults only. And then I just want to add in one last safety thing about e-bikes. So of course, yes, helmets when we're riding our e-bikes, but you may or may not have started to hear a lot of the stories about the batteries. They catch on fire. And my colleagues in New York City who do my type of a job, they're just like, oh gosh, what can we do about these e-bikes? Because they are setting houses and apartment complexes on fire because people are storing them indoors. So if you do have an e-bike, whether, again, it's for a child in your life or anyone else, they should be stored outdoors, or now we're hearing that they're starting to make some special devices where you can actually safely store the battery in a sealed box. So that way, in case it does go on fire, that will be contained and prevent that fire from spreading. So just wanted to share that. So I'll pass it back to you, Liz, or if any of my colleagues have anything to add there.
I think that's a really important tip. I also wonder, as you were talking, not just the e-bikes, but scooters, electronic scooters and things like that also have batteries. So I think we need to think about all those things and make sure we've got the appropriate safety in place. Let's move to Kristi. I would love, Kristi, for you to talk a little bit about pedestrian safety. And, a lot of times when the weather's nice, kids are, excited, especially at the beginning of the summer. And sometimes street safety and crossing the road can be an important issue to be aware of.
Absolutely. So another fact that most people are very surprised to hear is a third of the road fatalities in Suffolk County are pedestrians. And that is a staggering number, and it's far more than in New York City. And it's because we have higher rates of speed out here. So pedestrian safety is so important. So again, leading by example, kids can't anticipate danger the same way that we do as adults, because we've experienced so much in our lives that we can now gauge when an experience or a situation is going to be safer or unsafe. But kids don't have that same perception because they don't have that life experience yet. So when, as an adult, if we're letting kids cross the street with us in the middle of a road or from behind parked cars or outside of a crosswalk, maybe as adults, we're looking safely, but we're not having that conversation with our kids. We're setting an example that it's okay to just cross the street anywhere. And when those kids are on their own, or when they've kind of gotten excited and go to run off, they are going to be doing those same behaviors. So I try to make it a hard, fast rule that, and people think I'm a little over the top with it, but even when I'm around other just adults in my lives, I'll be like, no, the crosswalk is right there. Let's lead by example. Let's just walk a little bit. Walking is good for us anyway. We're not in a rush to get anywhere. So let's just safely make sure that we're in the crosswalk and really talking with the children in our lives. A really fun activity. So I do some older adult programming too for falls prevention and improving balance. And I always love the opportunity to say, hey, how great is it to have some intergenerational time of grandparents walking with our kids? Because a lot of little kids don't get to learn these safety things anymore. And if a grandparent or any adult in our children's lives can spend the time to go on a walk and talk about all of the safety things that, before we cross, we're going to look left, right, left again. And let's make sure that the driver looks at us and waves us on before we start to cross the street. All of these things are just great ways to spend time with our kids and setting them up for all of these really good life skills as they grow older and become more independent. So before they become teenagers and adults, let's spend some quality time with them and just have some safety walks and enjoy the outdoors together.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate those comments. And I want to also talk a little bit about heat stroke. We find that heat stroke is a major issue in the summertime. And I would love for Jackie, especially when we talk about non-vehicle related deaths in children under 15, heat stroke can be a very important, serious issue. So can you describe for our viewers, what is heat stroke? How does it happen? And maybe what are some of the things that we can do to prevent it?
Sure. Just making sure you guys can hear me. Okay. Yep. Heat stroke is the leading cause of non-crash vehicle related deaths in children under 15. Basically, heat stroke happens when the body is not able to cool itself quickly enough. Children are a little bit more, it happens a little bit more easily in children because their body heats up 3 to 5 times faster than an adult does. And when the child's left in a hot car, major organs can begin to shut down when the temperature reaches 104 degrees Fahrenheit. And a child can die when his temperature reaches 107 degrees Fahrenheit. And cars, they can heat up quickly. In just 10 minutes, a car can heat up to 20 degrees Fahrenheit, higher than when it started. And you think that you could crack a window, you can leave the air conditioner on, but it really does little to keep it cool once the car is turned off. And this fact I didn't know when I was looking up a little bit more on this topic, but heat stroke can happen even when outside temperature is low as 57 degrees. So it doesn't have to be extremely hot, but it can happen, at a cooler temperature as well. So little tips for parents, and guardians, babysitters, always check the back seat and make sure all children are out of the car before locking it and walking away. Avoid distractions while driving, especially cell phone use, because you might forget that you had the child in the back of the car that fell asleep. And be extra alert when there's a change in your routine, like when someone else is driving your child or you took a different route to work or to childcare. This is a nice tip. I even do this myself with my children in the car. I always put my pocketbook or whatever bag I'm using with my cell phone inside in the back seat. So it always, when you actually have to get out of the car and grab your bag and get your cell phone, it always enforces you to check the back seat when you arrive at your destination. Another thing you should do is keep your car locked when it's parked to prevent a curious child from entering when no one is around. Many hot car deaths, unfortunately, have occurred when a child mistakenly locks himself inside the car. So maybe he got outside and went into the garage, opened the door of the car, got in it, and then closed it, and now he can't get out. Make sure that your children do not have easy access to your car keys. Keep them out of the children's reach. I know my 5-year-old knows how to open and close it. She could definitely do that with the buttons. So definitely keep it out of reach of them, and teach them from a young age that cars are not a safe place to play. Other things you should do, keep the seats, your rear fold down seats closed to prevent any child from trying to crawl into the trunk and inside the car. And remind them that car trunks, you shouldn't be playing in them. It's not for games, and it's not something for like hide and seek. And remember, I told you about with pools, if child's missing, the first thing you should always check is the pool, make sure they're not drowning in the pool. And then the next place is to check the car, especially the trunk, and make sure no child's left in the trunk or the car.
That's great. Thank you, Jackie. We've got an anonymous question here. That's a really great question, I think. What about when you first enter a car and it's really hot and you actually can feel it in your breath, how hot it is? Is there a standard amount of time that you should wait before putting your children in the car?
There really isn't a standard amount of time you should wait. I think you could kind of use maybe, your knowledge, put the AC on and let it cool down for a few minutes and then go in the car. Also, always just check the car seats or whatever seats you're putting them on, even the buckle itself. Wait till that's cool enough to actually put because those can burn as well.
Mm-hmm. Great points. Thank you. All right, Chelsea, I want to talk about trampolines. I never had one as a child. My parents were deathly afraid of them because of a neighbor child who got really hurt one summer. So talk a little bit about trampoline injuries and what can we do to play, make sure our children are playing safely and have some guidelines for that.
It's a great question. I definitely have a little bit of a love-hate relationship with trampolines because my kids love them and I am definitely less of a fan. We do see, trampolines are very, very popular. We have a lot of indoor trampoline parks in this area. So we do see these injuries year round, although there is definitely an increase in the summer months. And that is due to the purchase and use of home trampolines. which I'm sure many people you know have. So just to begin, both the American Academy of Pediatrics and the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons strongly discourage the use of trampolines, of home trampolines, especially for children younger than 6 years old. And as I mentioned, there's been a huge rise in the purchase of home trampolines, largely due to the COVID pandemic. You know, people were looking for creative ways to get their kids outside and to get them to have fun and exercise and entertain them. So it's completely understandable. But because of that increase in home purchases, those numbers have definitely steadily been rising. The most common injuries we see related to trampolines are long bone fractures. What I mean by that is like arms or legs, head injuries, and lacerations. Just to give you an idea of numbers, according to a 2022 report published in Pediatric Emergency Care, over 800,000 children in the US sustained trampoline-related injuries. That's between 2009 and 2018. And the vast majority of those, about 75%, were just from home trampolines. And just bear in mind those, you know, that's pre-pandemic numbers. That's before everyone went out and bought their own trampolines as well. So why do these injuries occur? So there's three kind of big reasons that most injuries occur in home trampolines. One is you often have multiple children jumping on them at the same time, right? So they're laughing, they're bouncing around, they're crashing into each other, they're not really paying attention, they're doing tricks. So that is one reason. And if that's the case, if multiple children are jumping at the same time, it's much more likely that the smaller child in this scenario is going to be the one that gets hurt. Another reason is a lot of these home trampolines, whether they're elevated or low to the ground, they have surrounding netting, which does offer really a false sense of security. It does not actually prevent most trampoline-related injuries. And the third major reason is kids are not always well supervised on these. They'll just, run to the backyard and play on them, and they're not always, being watched really closely when they're playing on them. So I think that, the takeaway message really from it is it's truly wisest to simply just not buy a home trampoline and think of other creative ways to get your kids out and having fun and enjoying the warm weather. And if you do have one, just, don't allow young children to jump on them because of the risk of serious injury. An example of this is, younger children, again, under 6, are more likely to fracture bones rather than have sprains. And that's just due to skeletal immaturity. And just only let one child jump at once, practice taking turns, and just always, always, always provide adult supervision with trampolines as well.
Great. Thank you for all that information. That's very helpful. Again, don't forget, we do have a QR code where you can submit additional questions. So feel free as we continue to come around to the tail end of our discussion and drop a chat or go ahead and send us something through the QR code. Hydration. Hydration is hugely important, especially with outdoor activities, playing sports. Anne-Marie, please talk a little bit about hydration and what we can do to stay safe with regard to staying hydrated.
Sure. So staying hydrated is super important, especially during summer months when the temperatures are on the rise and it's really hot outside. It's really important to offer healthy beverages at every meal and with snacks. So, scheduling frequent water breaks is very important during the course of the day because kids are often super active outside, running around, and they don't take the time to stop and hydrate. So, make it a point to stop every, hour or so and have some water. Don't wait for kids to get thirsty to offer drinks. If they're feeling thirsty, then they're probably behind on their hydration already. So it's important to stay ahead of the game when it comes to hydration. Sports-related drinks can be helpful, but really water is the best beverage of choice. Sports-related drinks can provide some electrolytes, but water is number one when it comes to hydration for children. It's very important to avoid drinks with caffeine. Any, sodas or monster drinks or anything. It's very important to not offer those to children or for teenagers to drink them, because they actually act as diuretics and they contribute to water loss. So really try and eliminate those and use them, use caffeinated beverages as a last resort. And water is great, but there are kids who don't love to drink water. So there are other creative ways to keep your children hydrated. Some of those things are offering popsicles, which are great because they taste well and they're good in the summertime when it's super hot outside, and they do provide hydration. And also many fruits and vegetables are a great source of fluid and hydration. So things like watermelon, strawberries, cucumbers, tomatoes, and celeries are great sources of fluid and are also packed with nutrients. So those are really good to keep around and to snack on during the day. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends 6 glasses per day of water for children. And if they're active and outside in the heat, it's important to even increase that amount. Some other important points about hydration and kind of staying in the heat is make sure there's shade available, and that kids and anybody are able to access shade during the day, and also take more frequent breaks during the day when kids are at camp or when they're outside playing. They lose track of time, but we should really be monitoring how long they're outside and scheduling breaks for them. And then sunblock also is super important. We should apply and reapply sunblock often and wear hats to avoid heat exposure when we're outside.
That's great. Thank you so much, Anne-Marie. We had a question about oranges. Someone said that they see, it brought back memories. I played soccer as a child, and there was always the mom that brought the orange slices and gave them to us after the game. So
absolutely.
You mentioned a lot of fruit. I'm sure that oranges are probably helpful for hydration as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they have a little bit of sugar in them also. So it helps. It's very good, especially during the summer months and also during physical activity like soccer or sports.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you so much. I'd like to circle back. We talked about trampolines and trampoline safety, but we didn't really talk so much about playground safety tips. And Chelsea, I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about just playgrounds in general and what some of the risks and how we can avoid injuries on playgrounds.
Yeah, absolutely. I also just want to say, I also remember all the orange slices coming out at soccer games as well. That's also a very vivid memory for me. So yeah, general summer safety tips for playgrounds, whether it's a playground that you have in your backyard or one you're going to, just some general things to help avoid injury are the following. One, just remember that in these summer months, it can get very, very hot. And so equipment such as metal, rubber, and plastic can get extremely hot in the summer, especially if it's under direct sun. So you really just want to make sure those are cool enough before letting your kids use it. Burns can occur, as Dr. Bober mentioned, with clips in cars, in very hot cars. The metal parts of buckles and belts can get very hot. It's the exact same thing. A metal slide can get extremely hot in the summer. And we do see burns from it. So that is something to make sure is cool enough to use before you let your child slide down wearing shorts and can get injured that way. And you also want to just make sure that, especially on public playground equipment, that children are wearing shoes at all times. Recently had a kid who, fell and had a wood chip didn't fall, but stepped and had a wood chip embedded in their foot from a playground. So, you want to make sure that they're wearing shoes at all times on playground equipment. And as important as helmets are when you're riding bikes and anything with wheels, it is actually better to remove them from children when they're playing on playground equipment. Anything that, essentially can fall, loop around their neck, you do want to make sure is removed when they're on a playground. And you don't want to let them attach like ropes or leashes or similar items to play with, because children can strangle on those if they are attached on equipment in ways that they're not supposed to be. And Additional safety tips. There's always lots of moving parts sometimes on playgrounds. So just be aware of those with especially with little children, area, parts of the playground that can pinch or trap small parts of the body. We've definitely seen injuries related to that. And playground surfaces, you want to make sure are, relatively soft. They should be safety tested mats or loose fill material. So that's like wood chips or sand, shredded rubber, bark, anything like that. And there should be a good depth. The recommendation, I believe, is about 9 inches or 6 inches for shredded rubber. And you also want to make sure that those surfaces expand beyond the playground equipment themselves. So it should be at least 6 feet in all directions. You don't want this really nice, soft, cushy surface ends right at the bottom of the slide as your child, extends and goes forward off the slide beyond that area of safety. So again, those are just some general safety rules. I think the most important takeaway really is on playground equipment, especially if you're talking about young children. They really just need to be supervised at all times to make sure that they're using it properly, they're using it safely, and that that everyone just prevents injury as much as possible.
Great. A lot of great tips. Thank you so much. I think it's important that we talk about our older children and talk about some of the risks with regard to summer. Obviously, summer parties, drinking, driving becomes more of an issue during the summer months. So, Kristi, what can we do to help keep our teenagers and our older children safe?
Sure. Thanks, Liz. We have a saying that from Memorial Day to Labor Day, those are the 100 deadliest days of summer because of the spike in car crashes, especially for teenagers. So when we're talking about older kids, anything road safety related, I love to talk about because those are really the devastating type of injuries that we really want to prevent from happening. So pedestrian safety, making sure that we're walking facing traffic, and some of the other tips that we suggested, teaching kids young. Same thing with helmets. I saw a great comment come through that said that they made sure that it was a rule for their child to be wearing that helmet in order to be riding that wheeled activity that they were going to engage in. So when you're supervising them as young children, and it's sometimes a challenge, think of how it's going to be when they're older and they're out with their friends and influenced by all of the group of kids that they're with without that adult supervision. So if we can, embed these safety rules and habits and behaviors early, we hope that those are going to carry through as they become much more independent. So walking, facing traffic, riding bikes with traffic, and a lot of kids who before they start driving do not know the rules of the road. So talking again, just like we want to talk with little kids about safely walking on our streets, we also want to make sure our kids that are growing older and more independent and riding their bikes out with friends also understand the rules of the road, because that is what our bicyclists should be following. And kids are not driving yet, so it's not something that they're going to be very familiar with, and how to look out for unsafe situations when crossing streets or passing driveways or anything else like that. When it comes time for our teenagers to be driving, of course, for anyone, any type of drug or alcoholic beverage is going to impair us, and that is impaired driving. So we want to avoid that at all costs. We now have lots of options and opportunities to make sure that not only the good old designated driver option, but Ubers and Lyfts. And for all of our parents out there, having those conversations before your teenagers are going to parties and social events of what to do if they feel like they're in an unsafe situation. So maybe they did have a ride home, but during the party, they realize that their ride home is now intoxicated for whatever reason, and they don't feel safe. Is that child going to feel comfortable calling their parents to say, can you come pick me up? I don't feel safe. And how is that going to go? No questions asked. Call me anytime. Use a special key phrase that nobody's going to know that you're calling me to ask to be picked up. Tell them you're sick, you feel like you're going to throw up, and you need me to come pick you up. Nobody's going to question that. So have those conversations before the teenagers start going to parties and events, so that way they know how to handle a situation that they're feeling uncomfortable with, and that they feel empowered to speak up or when to call and ask for help, and know that their parents are going to be receptive to that. And yes, maybe you'll have to have follow-up conversations, but every parent we've ever spoken to, they will say, I wish my child would have called me in the event that something terrible did happen. So have those conversations early and often. Distracted driving. It's a leading cause, right? So putting down the cell phones, setting by, by example. So even as adults, making sure that we're not using our cell phones while driving. So that way our kids aren't seeing us using our cell phones while driving. And if you call your teenager and find out that they're driving, make sure that they know that they shouldn't be picking up. And we've had teenagers tell us, I have to pick up every time, or I have to text back immediately, or my parents are going to get mad at me. Again, having those conversations of, if they're driving, they shouldn't be looking at their cell phone. So making sure that all of these conversations around safe driving, going out to parties or other social events are happening early and often as much as possible to keep our teenagers safe on the road, just like we want to be protecting all of our younger children too.
That's great. Thanks so much. I'll tell you, my daughter's 20, she's in college now, but when she started driving, at the age of, 15 learning, and then at 16, we found an app called Life 360. And I know a lot of parents use that app. There's probably other apps out there as well, but you can find apps and put a geofence. Like we put it around her high school, around the home, etc. So that way she didn't feel like she had to call us or pick up the phone when she was driving, because we knew she was such a rule follower. We told her, all the safety issues and techniques that you just talked about, but that way it would notify us that she's leaving school or she's leaving this place. And then we would know, okay, she's on the road. Okay, she's home safe. So, so there's lots of tips and tricks, lots of apps and things like that out there to help as well. So thank you, Kristi, for those comments. Well, thank you, everyone, from the folks that dropped chat comments in. We really appreciate the conversation. For those of you that sent us anonymous questions, really appreciate that. I'd like to just do one quick thing, do a little round robin with each of the members of our panel, and just give your one key takeaway or one key topic that you want to end the day with. So why don't we go ahead and start with Anne Marie. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry. I would say, supervision is probably the number one thing that I would recommend. I think that everybody thinks that somebody else is watching their child, and you need to watch your child, and you need to be responsible for what your child is doing to keep them safe. So that's my tip.
Thanks, Anne Marie. I appreciate that. Kristi, what's your tip? Your final tip for the day?
Sure. I mean, I think you probably heard me say it a few times, but leading by example and speaking out loud what we're doing and why we're doing it, because we have the information in our head and we can judge the situations, but children don't have that same experience. So leading by example and really explaining, because when we're just told no, we kind of want to go do it, right? So giving reasoning behind what we're doing and how we're doing it.
Exactly. Great point. Chelsea, what is your thought process? What's your final thought for today?
I also really have to go with supervision as being, the number one takeaway, because I really think it just applies to all the topics that we've talked about. And, supervising when they're young, leading by example when they're older. And I would just also, I guess, put a plug in for, I think swim lessons are just incredibly important and starting them young. We live on an island and everybody has pools. We're surrounded by water in all directions. And I just think it's an incredibly important thing for children to know how to do here.
Great. Thanks, Chelsea. I appreciate that. Jackie, what are your closing thoughts?
I'm going to give one specific one because I really don't want to see anyone in the ER. At the barbecues or at your family parties with the pool, please get a lifeguard or have a pool watcher assigned at all times. That's really important. My most important tip for the day. Great.
Thank you so much. All right. Well, again, thank you all for joining us. We have put up a telephone number. Our Yeah, thank you. Our telephone number and our website. So if you have other questions or think of things afterwards, please feel free to reach out for more information. Please also note that this has been recorded and will be available. And if you would like to send the link out to other friends or family that may have missed this discussion, by all means, please go ahead and do that. And we're very excited about our Stony Brook experts and all of the knowledge they've shared. And hope that you come back to this and listen to it again, because there's a lot of nuggets of information and pearls of wisdom. And I'm sure it was a lot to absorb. So thank you. Have a wonderful day and have a safe summer.